Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds, Thursday night live edition, a program that has been requested. Someone did, if you're a regular follower, she has been on before, but Mary's going to be back with us here in a little bit. And we're talking native plants and birds and butterflies and projects. We're going to do a little different tonight. I mean, we've done favorite hummingbird plants, we've done favorite like fruit bearing plants for the fall, and we're going to go into a little bit of how projects and laying out and making some great diversity for your birds and other wildlife. So that's what we're going to be covering tonight. Let's see, we got people jumping on already. I see Kurt's been on. Kurt from right down the road here, and hello, this from Kansas City, north. Okay, so, yeah, the north just down the street here. And hi, Steve from East Tennessee. Yeah, you've been, like I said, you've been absent for a while, and then you guess you had a job change, and now you're free. Thursday nights are free again. Welcome to have you. See, good to see you having back in again. Andrew from Cincinnati, who requests this program pretty frequently. He really likes the native plants, and he's building a oasis in his yard for sure. Hello, Jan from Belton, who, by the way, is a really good artist. I'm telling you. All right, yeah, tons of hummingbirds right now. That's great. That's right. I put my feeder up back out. I hadn't been up for a long time, and boy, they were on it within an hour. It's crazy. One hummingbird. I've got all three. I got adult male, adult female, and young ones coming. The camera's going crazy. Hello, Lisa from Canada Land. I like that. Yes, the episode you've been waiting for. Yes, you have certainly been wanting the plant lady on again. Gary, welcome in. Jim from Minnesota. I've got a Jim from Tennessee that might check in too. That's right. Hello, Ken. Welcome in. Gary saying hello to Andrew. You guys, I love it. And this communication gets going on. North Texas, Ellie Harper, welcome in. That is a good thing, Jan. You got a lot of pollinators. That is a very positive. Well, hello, Rick Burris from North Carolina, who sent some pictures in today, and they're going to be in tonight's program a bit. All right. Hello, Lou, just up the road from north of Kansas City, Lat City. Hi, Sandy. Welcome in from Kankakee, Illinois. That button didn't work. Steve K. I love it when you guys, everybody's greeting each other. I love it. Mark, this is a great time, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, I know it's near and dear to you too. Kurt's been so dedicated to restoring some of that acreage there to native plants. Jeremy from Smoky Central Minnesota. You got wildfires going on up there? Sounds like Joshua Gorey, quick stop, Wapella, Illinois. Welcome. I love the different points of the Boston guy checked in today. So Steve, the Massachusetts thing. Yeah, that he sent me a picture of our video actually of a molting juvenile ruby throated on his hummingbird feeder today. You could definitely see those pin feathers sticking out of his head. That was a little funny looking bird there. Brand new birding from Lexington, Kentucky. Well, welcome in. One of my best friends from childhood, fellow Eagle Scout, everything from my hometown, lives in Lexington, has lived there for many, many years. Sherry ate territorial mourning doves. Yeah, at the time of year where the mourning doves are starting to build, they're going to start moving south. That's for some of them, but there'll be lots of them in the. Is that a dog barking in the background? Who do I hear? And I can hear Mary, but I don't see Mary. Yeah, hello from Denver, North Carolina. Where is Denver, Adam? I'm from the southeastern part of the state. Melanie and I are. Oh my gosh, they're swamping in. All right, you guys, you are jumping on. I'm loving the activity so far. That's great. You guys are, and as we say this, but it really does help when you guys comment
Look at that buzzing noise again. Mary, what was that, Mary?
Oh, what was that, Mary? Before we had the buzzing noise.
Oh, my microphone.
Oh, it's a microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
No.
I can hear it, yeah.
Better now?
No.
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 What did we do last time? Something with the mic. It was.
Call in your IT department. Welcome from South Georgia.
Did it
Yeah,
stop?
let me mute and see if I
think
can
it
figure this out.
stopped.
Oh, it
Yep.
stopped?
I think it has, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We got it figured out.
Hey.
18 species of birds in your yard showing up with their babies. That's right. Hello, Frontier from SoCal, one of our real regulars from out west. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Deborah Duncan. Native plants, my favorite subject. Excellent. Guy started me bird watching, and his parents were from Pofftown, just north of Winston-Salem. Been there many times. Just moved to Wisconsin. Okay, Bobby, yeah. Oh, yeah. They think you saying that. I have people that like somebody came from where? Somebody
Joplin.
Joplin, yeah. It's great to hear the
That's from before.
Okay, so yeah, we've got that solved now. Hey, Sandy, you guys must have some wildfires from maybe up north, right?
Canada.
Up in Canada. All right, Miss Paris, welcome in. Yes, I'd say comments really do help the algorithm. Whenever you guys, even just a smiley face or just in one word, those count toward YouTube knowing that you guys are watching, which is great. All right. Northwest of Charlotte, madam. Another North Carolina person on tonight.
Sandy says you thought the dog was Sophie. No, it's Mary's dog.
Yeah, it's Mary's dog. Sophie's upstairs tonight.
She decided to eat when it was time to come
right
down
when we started coming downstairs. Yes, you did. All right. Well, welcome in, everybody. And we're going to pause questions and stuff for a while. We're going to let Mary talk and get through this, and then we'll take questions at the end, like we always do. But we're going to pause the questions for a little bit, so you guys keep checking in, absolutely, and we will get to you for sure. But first thing I'm going to do is welcome in our guest tonight, and here is Mary Nemecek, a good friend of mine and my go-to plant person, and Andrew knows this well because Andrew sends me pictures of plants and stuff all the time, and I immediately forward them to Mary so she can identify them and tell us if they're native or not native and things like that. So, like I said, well, first welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for
having me. What's the name of your dog that we were hearing?
So we have Snowy and Stanley.
Yes, are they out of the room? Oh, well,
no, I just call them.
I got you. Well, this audience certainly knows about having dogs. Sophie is some here with us, that's for sure. So, so I told you, in the past we have done, our favorite hummingbird plants and our favorite like berry producing fall plants or wildlife plants for birds and other wildlife. And when you and I talked about doing this program, you had some ideas as how to change up a little bit and also maybe inspire people for some of these projects that you've worked on and I've worked on and things like that, and know that people can, of course their yards are going to run out, but we show them some projects that they could do, like in church parking lots and at my son's elementary school and things like that, where you can further and spread the impact of native plants.
Yeah, and I thought maybe these projects would give them ideas for their yards. They don't have to be as big as these projects are, although these are not huge projects. They're not, taking over an acre or anything like that.
Yeah.
And talk about kind of the plants that we use in it, and then talk about some important things like what you have to do to maintain native plants and how they evolve long term. They don't stay the same every year in your yard. And I thought we could do some of that. So,
yep. And of course, I moved last year. One of the things I love the most is it's maintenance provided, and I don't have to do any yard work, and which is me and that. Not my favorite. So I confess, my yard does not look like the picture you're going to see of the old yard here later on. So we're going to start with birds.
Yeah, let's start with birds.
All right.
Everybody loves birds.
Let's see. Let's go with this layout. All right. Gonna have to pick and choose this. All right. Oh, look, the QR code showing up there. That's great. It took a while for that to show up. So, hi, Mary. How do native plants affect birds?
So birds are, whether they're insect dependent or seed dependent or fruit eaters, they are all dependent upon native plants. And so you picked a great set of pictures here because there's one of each. There's seed eaters, your goldfinches, a red-eyed vireo eating roughleaf dogwood berries in the fall, and then a house wren with a bug that's probably taking it back to the nest. So
the number of insects that birds consume, that, again, like you said, goldfinches are one of the very few species of birds that do not eat insects. They don't feed their babies insects at all. Those are mourning doves or that are familiar. That's why cowbirds can't lay their eggs there, because their babies die within just a few days. So, but when it comes to red-eyed vireos and house wrens and so many other birds, the number of insects they consume is staggering.
yeah, we've talked about this before, but a brood of 4 to 6 chickadees from the time they hatch to the time they fledge, which is about 2 weeks in the nest, they will consume 10,000 insects. And they forage within 164 feet of the nest, which they're not going 2 miles down the road to a conservation area or a big park. They're getting those insects to feed their babies from your yard, basically.
Yeah.
So it's so important that through the different life cycles, as you said, almost all of the babies are insect eaters. So it's important that you have plants in your yard that are going to bring those insects in. They're going to be the host plants. They're going to host the caterpillars for, butterflies and moths. They're going to bring in different pollinators. There was a picture we talked about using that I have of Western kingbirds, and they're all lined up, and they've got this giant dragonfly. I get dragonflies in my yard. So anything that you have that brings insects into your yard helps feed the birds. And some birds, like flycatchers, eat insects regularly. Sometimes they just feed it to their young in the nest. A lot of birds will then move, like fruit eaters will go to the berries. So red-eyed vireos eat berries in the fall when they're migrating. Orioles are fruit eaters. Help me out here, Mark. Cedar waxwings.
Oh yeah, there's so many. Poison ivy being such an important plant for a lot of migrating warblers, like Nashville warblers. I've seen eating poison ivy berries like crazy, and yellow rump warblers and several species that. And I'm assuming that, I guess we've talked before, native plants are far better for producing insects than cultivars and many of the non-native ornamentals that get planted.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about, because we get this question all the time. If does your yard have to be 100% native? I have this plant I really like, can I grow it in my yard? And we've got some examples of that. So typically native plants, I've got a couple things to say. So typically native plants are what insects have evolved in, and that's what they're going to use. Now there are cultivars that are very close to natives that insects use the same way. I'll give you an example. Tropical milkweed is one of them. Caterpillars eat it. One of your pictures that you have is a hummingbird feeding on it. It's part of the milkweed family. It's not native here. It's an annual, but it's used very well. The one thing I will say is when you're using a non-native plant in your yard, make sure it's nothing that is invasive. Make sure that's a plant that has wildlife value, and it's not something that's going to be invasive, like burning bush, which has very little wildlife value, which is the second point I was going to say, is a lot of the berry producing plants that are not native have very little value. So fat and protein content and things like poison ivy berries are over 50%. If you look at something like honeysuckle and the fat and protein content of it, it's less than 1%.
Right.
So when you're talking about fueling these birds, you want something native because it gives them better nutrition. It's not empty calories. But it is okay to use non-native plants in your yard, especially, we talked about this in my yard. I have about a third of an acre. And so to have something blooming all the time, because native plants They come up, they bloom, and then they gather their energy and they store it for the next year so they can come back. So you have to have something blooming all the time. When I don't, it's called the nectar gap. And my yard just isn't big enough to have something going all the time. And so I use non-native plants to kind of fill that in, because annuals will bloom all summer long. And so they kind of fill in that gap for pollinators that are looking to feed.
Want to brag on Missouri a little bit here. Didn't the governor just sign a new law banning some of these invasive exotic plants?
Yes, yes, that was a huge win. The biggest one is calorie pears, which is Bradford pear trees are a part of that. And you know, Bradford pear trees not nutritious, and they've become very invasive. And when you drive around, especially urban areas in the spring, you just see them coming up. And the original Bradford pear tree was actually self-sterile, so it didn't produce fruit, but it was incredibly soft and would easily split apart.
Yeah.
And so then they started coming up with different cultivars trying to cross it with harder wood, and that's where the fruit production came from. And unfortunately, the ones that come up on the side of the road, a lot of the times they cross them with locust trees, and those will have nasty thorns on it. And if Bradford pear trees take over a natural area, you pretty much have to, you really can't reclaim it. You pretty much have to bulldoze it and try to restore it. But yeah, those will be, so we're very excited about that. That's a big win for wildlife and native natural areas and native flora in the state. So.
And I don't know how many other states have done this, but hopefully they will. But they'll get on board with some of these.
Yeah.
Some of these plants are uber aggressive.
Yes. And sometimes it's state dependent, like loosestrife is a really big problem up north. It can be invasive here, but we don't have the problem like they have up north with it.
Yeah, so, Minnesota, if you any body of water, you go by. Yeah, you see it.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned caterpillars and butterflies?
Yeah. So I've said this before, but if you think only about nectar plants, it's kind of like a singles bar. Your pollinators will stop in, they'll have a drink, but they're not going to raise their family in your yard. So you really want plants that provide both nectar and serve as host plants for the caterpillars. So these are a couple in my yard. The butterfly is a silvery checker spot, and it's feeding on, I believe, oxeye sunflower, but it's feeding on a composite. And interestingly, they also eat composites. So they eat the leaves of my Rudbeckia and my purple coneflowers and things like that. And those caterpillars are the ones on the bottom, the black ones. They fall off kind of easily when you move them on the leaf, and they'll come back up. But if you have composites like Rudbeckia and pale purple coneflower and purple coneflower and things like that in your yard, you'll get silvery checker spots and also the caterpillars, because they can eat the same plant as that produces the nectar for the adults. On the right side of the screen is the largest butterfly in North America. It's one of my very favorites. It's the giant swallowtail. And it is actually on Verbena, I hope I say this right, Verbena bonus aris.
Lots of vowels.
Yes, it's got the cis at the end. I want to call it bonus aries, but anyways, it's not native. It comes back from seed every year. It's an annual. It doesn't really spread. I'm kind of surprised that it comes back from seed, because it's really a tropical plant. But it's a very good pollinator plant. And then the caterpillar on the bottom feeds on wafer ash, which is a native. It does bloom. It's a small bush or tree. Blooms in the spring, gets lots of little pollinator bee fly things on it when it blooms for a short period of time. And then it's host to the giant swallowtail caterpillar. And Mark, look at that caterpillar. What does it remind you of?
Boy, it looks like bird poop to me.
That is their defense. They are so cool. They get as big as your thumb, but their camouflage or defense, I guess you would say, is that they look like bird poop. And I'll tell you the story. First time I bought a wafer ash bush, I had it on my patio, which is also where my bird feeders are. And I kept wanting, to see if I would get caterpillars on it. I was waiting to plant it, but I was sitting at the table eating breakfast one morning, and I thought, oh, some bird pooped on my, wait a minute. And
it's
sure enough,
moving.
Yep. But it was, even though I knew that's what was going to come, you first look at it and you think, oh, that's a bird dropping. And nope, it's actually the caterpillar.
That
So,
is really effective camouflage. You know, 'cause
yeah,
not a lot of birds that want to eat bird poop. So yeah,
no.
you fool them
And
in
they
some.
was literally like 3 feet from the feeders, and they weren't bothering it.
Yeah,
So,
that's very cool. And that's, I mean, we were talking about the number of butterflies, the number of caterpillars. I mean, that's a whole. Neither one of us are expert butterfly caterpillar people, but they just the importance of them, you know, and the feeding the babies and of course, you know, there's it's that cycle of life, that circle of life, whatever you want, you know, and and when we lose these, you know, these any gap in here that we lose, and that is, you know, you've told a story about you picked up some milkweed from the nursery to show the kids and put the monarch caterpillar on, and all of a sudden they curled up and died, fell off on it because they'd been sprayed with one of the pesticides, you know, or insecticides, whichever you want to call it. So yeah, it's fragile. I mean, people don't realize how fragile this system is, and anything you can do to help that system out. You want to
yeah,
talk about a couple of projects? Or oh,
well, I was going to say, if I had one wish, it was that, because so often, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with planting things that are beautiful because you enjoy going out and looking at them.
right,
I feel like that about beautyberry when it has purple berries in the fall. I'll go out and look at that color and come back in the house and think about it and go back out, and I just can't believe that color of amethyst exists in nature. But if people would start to look at things for wildlife value and what they bring, rather than just, like a Bradford pear tree. I mean, I have friends that have Bradford pear trees in their yard, or another kind of Callery pear, and they just like it. And the fact that it's invasive and that it's taking over natural areas and it's eliminating native habitat and it's reducing our biodiversity, they just don't go there. And I really hope that there is a huge shift that starts to be towards what we can plant in our yard that benefits wildlife, because seeing butterflies and seeing birds is every bit as enjoyable to me as anything else I'm going to put out there. And if you've
mhm,
got something out there that doesn't have wildlife value, and I'm not saying I have a peony bush, which I guess the ants like it, but it really doesn't have a lot of wildlife value.
yeah,
But my grandmother had them in her yard, and it's not invasive, and that is perfectly fine to have. But so much of my yard is simply just to bring in wildlife. When it was 100 degrees or whatever a couple days ago,
yeah,
there were so many butterflies in my yard, so many different kinds. And if you don't have that kind of biodiversity, you're just not going to get it. And if that biodiversity isn't available, those species aren't going to persist in that area.
yeah.
So,
I really think that um, the monarchs, the plight of the monarch has probably been the best boost for people's thinking that way over the last few years. I mean, that really woke a lot of people up, I think, you know, and scared them into action. I know that, you know, the native plant sales we do at the store, man, that first things that sold out were the milkweeds. He would bring as much as he could, and you know, people were like jumping on board, and they would think that way with all their planting. And I think, like I said, you need that gateway, and I think that has really helped a lot.
yep. And when you have plants, because all milkweeds have amazing flowers with great nectar, and it starts to bring in other things. So then you look and you think, oh, what is that? It's a great spangled fritillary. Well, what's its host plant?
Yeah,
That's how I got hooked. I mean, I came in from the bird angle. Like, what's the habitat like? Well, what are they eating? Well, what is that? What do you have to plant to bring that in? Um, I think that's the way, the kind of the paradigm shift that we need.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Well, a couple of projects that we were going to talk about tonight, and we both were very closely involved with, and I'm going to add the first one up there, which was my son's Eagle Scout project a few years back. This was his elementary school that he went to, and when he was older and he was working on his Eagle Scout project as a teenager, he just being around Mary certainly did. It was inspirational, and our friends David and Carla Dodds were very involved in the Plant Land Trust, and they were all encouraging to him to help. And this, the top picture here was what the entryway of the elementary school looked like before we got involved. And this is, as you can see, that is a barren desert. I'm sorry. the soil quality, everything, erosion, it was a mess. And so with consulting, like the Eagle Scout has to do, he has to consult with experts and get advice, and then he has to do fundraising for the goods needed. And of course, he has to recruit help to pull off the project. He's meant to supervise the project, and he's supposed to, and which is all great learning experiences for a young man and a young woman. That's just exactly a wonderful thing. And this project and these pictures here, and that is Mary's son Dylan in the bottom right there on this river of rock, this with that water drainage that curbed the erosion. There was the project was absolutely phenomenal. But wherein lies the problem with a project like this, Mary? What is the shortfall that we see so often?
I think the first thing that happened was, and so I caution everyone, this is something that I hear a lot. People want to plant pollinator gardens at schools. And I am 110% for that. Anything you can do for outdoor classrooms is amazing. The issue is native plants are not like petunias and, things that are normally planted in yards. And with native plants, there is a certain amount of maintenance. The first couple of years, and we've got some other projects will show you this, they involve a lot of weeding. And people don't know native plants, and they don't always know what's a weed and what's not a weed. So the first step, I think, in this project taking a turn that we wished it hadn't, was you were out of town and somebody decided to weed it and pulled up all the liatris. We had this native liatris that came from seed on a prairie in Kansas that I was so excited. It was punctata. It was the smaller one. I was so excited to be able to put it in this project. And it didn't even make it through the first year. It got pulled that first spring.
Yeah, the idea, the quasi agreement. Now, truth be known, not everybody's supportive of it, and in this case, unfortunately, the principal was not supportive of it, but the science teachers were. The fifth grade science club, and they were excited about it, and they wanted to get involved. And like you said, Matthew and I, we would go up there, and because right after we planted it, it was 100 degrees for a good 2 weeks with no rain right after planting. So he and I went up there every night and with my sprinklers, hooked up the sprinkler, ran it and ran it to make sure the root stock got, some water on it. And so we really worked on it to get it established. But, and I see this with Bluebird House projects with Boy Scouts and things like that, all those things, once these kids get older and they graduate, and they get their eagle and they move on, they get it, and there has to be somebody to take it up and, adopt it and work with it. And, it was so sad because believe me, this does not look like this today. You can see the bottom left and the bottom right. You can name off some of those plants that are there that we used, that you see the orange butterfly weed down front, and one of those bright purple mallows, or what they purple mallow, poppy mallows, or
purple poppy mallow. Yeah. So we did a lot of, because we knew the plant, we didn't want to water this. So the first year we had to water because we planted it kind of later in the June into June.
July, yeah.
And so you needed to water it, but these are mostly glade and dry prairie kind of plants. So there's the tuberosa at the bottom, the butterfly weed. There's yellow coneflower, there's pale purple coneflower, there's purple poppy mallow. The white behind Dylan is foxglove beard tongue. Like I said, there was supposed to be Liatris punctata, which is kind of a drier prairie plant in there. I thought we did a really great job. I mean, David knocked it out of the park with the design on this and putting everything in there. But unfortunately, that first year, it kind of fell victim to, at first, I would say good intentions. People that just didn't know native plants and didn't know it. Stuff started coming up, and they thought, oh, weeds, and started pulling things. And then as time went on, that just kind of increased. It just kind of, and I wanted to go buy it prior to this program, but I don't think there's really anything of it left there.
I remember that my heartbroken moment was I think at the end of the second year, maybe it for the third, and I went out there and it was mowed slick, and it was, there wasn't an inch of anything standing up out there. They just, and I, what can you do when you get that kind of all short? All right, you ready to go to, and then all right, and this is a project you were really involved with for them.
Yep, this was another Eagle Scout project. So this was at Antioch Middle School. They had a courtyard that, from the top picture, you can see what it looked like. And this Eagle Scout and their family did a project to put in a native planting. And so bottom left picture, you see what it looks like that first year. And that's where I really want to stress. It takes a good couple of years to get these plants to full bloom. And so there's a lot of space in between them when you put them in that you have to keep weeded. Mulch helps, but it is a labor-intensive weeding project when you first put it in. But this Eagle Scout did a great job. I mean, they laid it out. They got the pavers donated, the arbor. They picked the plants. They talked to myself and Linda Williams and some other people. They did the design themselves. It's got some of the plants that you've seen in the first one. It's got some phlox in there. It's got Rebecca in there. It's got blue sage. I think it's rose verbena in the front, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
But was just really, I mean, think about it. If your kid's at school and they're sitting in a classroom or walking down the hall, do you want them to look out the window and see the first picture or look out the window and see the third picture?
Right.
And the family took care of this. I don't know the state of it today. I don't know if the family's continuing to take care of it or if it's been passed on or if it's still in existence. But they even mowed the courtyard around it just to make sure that it didn't get mowed down.
Right.
But it was stunning, absolutely stunning.
That is like I said, just looking out the windows and seeing the butterflies and the birds that are in there on the seed heads, the goldfinches and things like that. And that's so the educational value, not to mention, obviously the environmental value of it, of that top left versus that bottom right. It's, it just inspiring.
And this was a completely closed in courtyard and the pollinators still found this.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, the fact that it, was surrounded by a building made of bricks and concrete and whatever's on the roof, did not preclude it from having great wildlife value and great educational value for kids.
And it's so important if you've got just one staff person, or better yet, a science club or something that's willing to keep it going year after year after year, and we came up with all kind of, in Matthew's project, we came up with curriculum ideas and helped them with that, what they could measure the growth and, and surveying and counting butterflies and counting. We came up a lot to try to keep that science club involved there. But it takes some work. We're being honest with people, and all these plants, people can use them in their yard, but also if you've got a community project, you want to spearhead that, these are just great ideas.
Yep. And I would say if you can do it for 5 years or 10 years and you don't know what's going to happen to it after that, don't let that stop you, because for those 5 or 10 years, there's amazing value in the community that it comes in contact with it.
That's right.
We did a roadside planting on 64th Street that lasted for, gosh, I don't know, 6 years or something. And it ended up not being, it's no longer there. But, it was worth it for us because there was a lot of conversations that came from that and a lot of people that learned about it, people that were inspired to start putting native plants in their yard. So just because you can't commit to long term, I wouldn't say, then cross it off your list. But I would say, just know the amount of work that's going to be involved when you first started. So,
and I've told the story before that, one of my board members at Martha Lafitte, her daughter, when she was young, she brought in a monarch caterpillar into the house, into a terrarium, put in the milkweed and started, and of course they went through the whole stage and they released the adult. That inspired her to become a very, very successful biologist and published and everything else. But that's what got her going as a young lady to pursue science. And like you said, that if there's only 2 or 3 years and you've tripped that switch and some kids, you don't know.
And weren't you involved in the planting up at the high school where someone had a cast on and it was the first time they'd ever put a plant in the ground and they
Yep.
had this cast on and they plopped down on the ground and dug a hole because they were so excited because they had never put a plant in the ground before.
Yep. There's so many kids today have it. That's right.
Yes. Yep. And the other thing, I have a story I tell. So when Dylan was in preschool, I probably preschool. This was like 2-3-year-olds. I mean, barely talking, but I would take in caterpillars, and I'd take in different ones. I'd take in silk moth caterpillars like polyphemuses or cecropias, and I'd take in, black swallowtails or, something that grows on parsley or fennel, monarchs, different things. So the kids could watch the caterpillars and they'd watch them evolve and they'd watch them spin a cocoon in the case of butterflies or, in the case of silk moths or a chrysalis in the case of butterflies. And then they'd watch them come out and they'd release them. And this was like a big deal to these kids. Well, one day there was somebody from the corporate office that visited the classroom and they looked in and it was a butterfly cage and there was a chrysalis in there. And the guy said, "Oh, look, it's made a cocoon." And one of the 3-year-old girls says, "That is a chrysalis. The cocoons are over here," and took him to the silk moth cage. And I thought, cool. My work here is done.
It does. That really puts a smile on your face, and a little bit of pat on the back, So,
yep.
All right, here's another project.
Yeah, so this was part of, I did a, Burroughs Audubon partnered with several different places in the community on a monarch butterfly grant back around 2015. And it did everything from restore prairies and Johnson County parks to some roadside habitat in Lee Summit and a lot of really good work. But one of the things we did was we did school gardens. And this is actually Dylan's school. And we planted the parking lot islands. So think about parking lot islands. Like they're usually either rock or they're clay soil with gravel in it. There might be some sprigs of grass, but not very sightly, right?
No.
I also equate this project, if anybody has the area between the sidewalk and the street, a lot of times people call that the hell strip. A lot of people will plant that, and you can plant that similar to this parking lot islands that we did to kind of give you some native habitat in areas where you don't want to mow or that are hard to maintain.
Yeah.
This parking lot island, it has mulch on it. It was literally clay with gravel. We didn't bring dirt in. We just worked with what was there and we put down all glade plants. And this was the first year of planting. And let me tell you, the weeding on this thing was intense. The first couple of years, it was intense. And in addition to that, it was in a parking lot. So there were cracks in the pavement and the maintenance guys, what do you do with cracks in the pavement when you run a big, campus?
Yeah.
You spray it. And so I had one of these islands I planted 3 times because it kept getting hit by herbicide from people spraying the parking lot. And we originally planted 7 parking lot islands and 3 of them got rocked over before I got them to stop. So there's only 4 still in existence today. But this was the first year of one of them. And this is what they look like now. So a couple things. One is I believe heavily, especially if you're doing a public planting, in using Coreopsis or Rudbeckia hirta, which is an annual Coreopsis, to do as a cover crop. And Johnson County actually does this when they plant prairies because it gives a pop that first year. It helps keep down the weeds. And it makes the project really stand out to the public. So they're not like, what's going on there? Is that going to be a bunch of weeds? We did it up on in Kansas City here on Berry Road. They did a project for Weatherby Lake. And we put this cover crop in the first year. And there was somebody that made a video of it unbeknownst to us, but one of the neighbors, because they thought, oh my gosh, they're just messing that up. They're just tearing all that area up or whatever. And then when the first year when all of this yellow bloomed, they were like, wow, they really knew what they were doing. The Coreopsis doesn't stick around. It doesn't handle competition well. So it's a biannual, but it reseeds. So once you plant it, you kind of have it until other plants outcompete it, which makes it a great crop to put in, or great cover crop, so to speak, your first year. But that's the right-hand picture, that yellow. And then the purple poppy mallow, you might recognize this picture from the cover of the Missouri Wildflower Nursery. That's one of the islands. I did some islands with rose verbena, and I did some islands with purple poppy mallow. And then the bottom one has pale purple coneflowers. So I planted all 4 islands exactly kind of with the same plants and the same design. And it's amazing what persisted in some that didn't persist in others. They've all kind of found their own space and what they like. Um, there's a lot of grasses in here. So we wanted it to be, really stand out in the spring when school was over and graduation was happening. And then in the fall when the kids are coming back to school. So there's a lot of blooms in the spring. And then in the fall, there's a lot of the grasses and then some asters and goldenrod to come up in the fall.
Yeah. I remember with Matthew's project, we incorporated a lot of little blue stem in there so that it has that fall color whenever the flowers got back, and has a beautiful, rich golden color. And the mixture and it's all these tricks. Like you said, David did a great job picking plants and locations and doing the layout for us. It inspires people when they do see it, but like you said, people have to get past that first year because they're putting all their energy in root growth, getting established before you get the show. So you just have to trust me, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. They say first year sleep, second year creep, third year leap. And that's really true. This parking lot island, I did prairie dropseed grasses all around the edges because, again, they're kind of a great canvas for the rest of the things to come up. And especially when people that have planted that area between the sidewalk and the street on their own yards, a lot of them will use prairie dropseed and then intersperse the flowers, the forbs with that. So it kind of gives them a nice canvas that helps suppress the weeds. And then we did little blue stem in the middle. Now things move around, like I said, they kind of find where they're happy. And I planted Baptisia, false blue indigo in every single island, and it only persisted in one. I planted hairy mountain mint in every single island, and it only persisted in one, but it's taken over a third of that island. So it's really interesting. They find the place that they're happy, and they just thrive there. So I love this. I will tell you, not everybody does. A lot of times when I'm out there working, people stop and tell me how much they like it, but I do get phone calls. I had somebody that wanted me to make sure to take the plants 6 to 8 inches around the edges of every island because they thought it would make it look more maintained. So they wanted me to move all the plants from the curb 6 to 8 inches in. I was like, do you have any idea how much work that is? We do burn this in the fall. It's it's in the middle of a parking lot. So you can safely burn it, which it helps a lot with the weed control, but we still do have weed problems because there's tires and cars that are coming through that have, weed seeds on them all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great project. Not everyone shares my opinion with it, but
well, never forget that out of the old neighborhood, the couple adopted that roundabout circle, and it planted, a pollinator garden there, and we had people in the neighborhood on the neighborhood page complaining about it because they didn't want to have to clean butterflies and bugs off the front of their car.
Yeah, I'm telling you, paradigm shift. We need a paradigm shift.
That's right. Exactly.
Yep.
All right, let's get to a couple of these last slides, and then we can open up for questions. This is my old house. This is out at I think we lived in for 15 years, and this was, when we bought the house, this whole front of this house was what do they call them, boxwood, and then just all typical urban landscaping project, contractor, and ripped every bit of it out, and it brought in some compost, some mushroom compost, whatever, and Mary helped me pick out plants, and this was early on. We had like you said, there are non-natives in there that fill in the gaps, of blooming. And what you can't see is there's some milkweed in there. There's some Baptisia in there, and there's columbine in there. So we really had it going good, and it's by the time I left there, we moved out here. I don't know what the fate is now. I hadn't been by there in a long time. And then
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so one of my very favorites, I'll never forget this, on Mark's yard, the purple is Maynite salvia. And I'm a huge fan of salvia. Not there is native salvia, but there's also a lot of non-native salvias, but I'm a huge fan of them no matter what kind it is. This is Maynite salvia, and it blooms kind of early May. It kind of again fills that nectar gap when there's not a lot of things up and blooming. But I told Mark, I said, you're going to love this plant. It fills the nectar gap. It comes in early. It's not pushy. And he looked at me like I had just told him I could sell him a bridge over a river on Mars. I mean, he was not a fan. He trusted me enough to put it in the yard. And what is the first phone call I got from you?
The hummingbirds eating on the purple. I was sitting on the front porch there on the top step, and right there in front of me, maybe 3 feet away, was the male hummingbird was feeding on that lobelia, the salvia, lobelia, whatever, and yeah, they used it a lot. It was, like I said, it was early on. There wasn't a whole lot blooming, and yeah, it gives them something, diversify their diet, nutritional values.
Yep. And that planting was 90% natives, but there was just enough non-native stuff in there to kind of fill in the nectar gaps, and it all had wildlife value.
Absolutely. All right, now Mary's yard.
This is my yard is, and I thought my yard looked a lot better until Mark put this picture up, and I was like, I thought my yard looked better. But I was complimented. I was told I had the best coneflower stand this year of any of the native plant houses in Kansas City. So I'm just going to go with that. I'm going to go with my friend that took it out.
There you go.
But these are all from my yard. So my yard is about a third of an acre, and the back half of it is wooded. And I planted a ton of Virginia bluebells and other early spring ephemerals back there. And when the timing is right, the bluebells so they're a little late because average is probably mid-April. But when the bluebells are a little bit late, I will find hummingbirds feeding on them long before they ever come to my feeder. I mean, they'll feed on the bluebells until they kind of start to fade, and then they come to the feeder. So this was a male hummingbird beginning of May. Bluebells were late that year, feeding on the bluebell patch. And I love my bluebells. I love my spring ephemerals back in the woodlands.
And they spread.
They spread and they fill in. And then, they come up and they bloom and they're gorgeous and they form this wonderful blanket, and then they go away and they just get out of your way the rest of the year.
Exactly. You never know they're even there. They were even there.
They go away like overnight.
Yeah.
But Virginia bluebells, I'm a huge fan of. Bottom left-hand picture is Liatris. I believe this is rough blazing star. I think it's rough blazing star. There's two that are very similar. But it has a dark form tiger swallowtail. So this is the yellow and black tiger swallowtails that you see. There's a dark morph of it. And I have a tulip poplar in my front yard, which is one of their host plants. And so I have this population of dark morph tiger swallowtails in my yard all the time.
That's cool.
That Liatris was planted in this coneflower bed. The problem is the deer population ticked up, and they love Liatris. So I almost never have Liatris blooming anymore. The leaves, it comes up every year. It tries, the bottom half of the plant is there with the leaves, but no flowers. But that's okay because they'll feed on the coneflowers and the other things. So I've kind of had to learn not just to attract wildlife to my yard, but how to live with the wildlife and still have plants that are there.
Absolutely.
So that bed has punctata in it. That finished blooming. It's got slender mountain mint. It's got some black-eyed Susans. The big plant in the back is a Baptisia. I actually planted a cultivar that Alan Branhagen really liked, and I planted the native one. And for whatever reason, the native one just doesn't like that spot, but as you can see, the cultivar does. But I will tell you, that cultivar is so full of bumblebees. And when Alan actually moved from Powell Gardens to Wisconsin, he bought a lot of the different cultivars of Baptisia and planted them in his yard and assessed which ones the pollinators liked the best. So, all cultivars are not bad. A lot of times cultivars will have changes in the flowers and make it less accessible to insects and things. But some of them are just as attractive to insects as the native ones. So that's my story. I have a native one in there. I have a cultivar. The cultivar loves it. The native one doesn't. So now I've planted yellow baptisia. I planted it this year, so I'm going to see if it likes it better than the false blue indigo. But
they're a great plant. I love the one out at the house. There in the old house, it came up and it just was a mainstay on the right. It was the anchor to the right side of my.
Yours loved it there. It was a great spot.
It did it really well. Yeah. So did those coneflowers. All right. Let's continue with this thought of this dark morph.
One more little thing. Oh, go back.
I'm just going to show you what they normally look like. I was going to a regular tiger swallowtail, and this one, the dark morph, it's the same butterfly, but just the light and dark versions. So
yep, the light's shining through the wing on this one, so you can see the lines in it. But normally they just look black if you don't get that backlit light on it. Just the only other thing I wanted to say is you can kind of see here on the right. One of the reasons I took this picture is this is where the utility boxes are between the property lines, and so I obviously don't want to dig deep down, but they're not the most attractive things. So my native plants on both corners of my yard kind of hide the utility boxes.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, and these are promise you that Rick sent some pictures in and from North Carolina, and we put this in there as one of you guys' wildflowers. This is beautiful stuff. This is phlox on the right. I don't know which one. I know there's tall phlox, there's wild sweet Williams, there's different ones. But this is in North Carolina, and the black-eyed Susans right on the top. Rudbeckia, as we've heard us say a couple of times tonight, and then purple coneflower, which is native. While we think of it as a prairie plant out here, open sunlight and really gorgeous blooming on prairies here in the Midwest, but it is in North Carolina. It is in some areas out there. It might not be as prevalent, but they're definitely there. And goldfinches.
Yeah, we're kind of on the western edge of it. So there's counties here where it was not early settlement documented on the prairies. So pale purple coneflower is really kind of more native to the Kansas City area, to the prairies that were here. Purple coneflower a little bit further east. But yeah, great plant.
Absolutely.
And our closing slide tonight.
Yeah, so this full disclosure, somebody sent this to me. I don't know who took the picture. We're pilfering it. But I just thought this was great. You deserve someone who wants to know the names of all your plants.
And that's kind of the theme of our programs, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to some questions here. And I know you guys have been. Wait a minute. Let's go this one.
Okay, scroll up and I'll show you where you're
all
at.
Right.
It's at 7:15. Keep going up. Dion.
All right.
That's the first question.
First question: what is the fat and protein percentage for sunflowers? Now that's in my. That's a two-pronged question there. You've got that giant sunflower head that has come up in your garden. And you have to realize that the sunflowers you buy and the sunflower seeds and the hearts and things in our store have gone through the drying process. They have been in storage, and the nutritional value, while it's published on the back, is correct. That doesn't equate to when it's still on the plant, fresh on the plant. And so the higher, more nutritious, it's like fresh off the boat versus frozen fish, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I don't know that percentage. Do you what the value is?
No, so I have a piece that does the fat and protein comparisons between native berries and non-native berries. I've not done seeds.
Yeah. So. And that would take some research. All right. Come back from next either. Yeah, they do. Absolutely. If they've got the soil, absolutely.
That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah.
So black swallowtails like dill, fennel, parsley, and native plants, golden Alexander.
And I'm seeing both. Yep. They fulfilled their. What is it about your? What do you say? Plants have fulfilled their job there. They provided food for the birds, and
right up to telling me so the plant that has not fed anything has not done its job.
Okay, I better put this in. Yeah, Melanie needs to. We talk about this every program we've ever done. This book is so good. bringing nature home, and some of the facts and like the caterpillar numbers that you talked about earlier and things like that. They come from this book, and it is absolutely phenomenal if you're interested in native plants. I bet Kurt is going to comment here on that because I know he loves that book. That's for sure. State of Tennessee has a program the residents can get milkweed seeds for planting. They advise help the monarchs. That's great. So much of the monarch emphasis when it finally gained the publicity that it did was they focused really heavily on the I-35 corridor all the way from Texas all the way to Minnesota and 50 miles on either side, I think is what their target was for a lot of restoration work, but all over, the West Coast population, the East Coast population, there's a lot of work going on, and that's wonderful. Yep. They take there's quoting your sleep, creep, and leak. That's absolutely. I think I heard that earlier today. Our nephew is especially from our garden in school. Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. That's what we love hearing. That get the kids involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know your yard has changed drastically over the last 3 years. A lot of coreopsis the first year. Yep. You got that great water feature too. Yeah, that's right. They do wander. That Mary always, when she talks about my yard, that old yard where we did bring in that load of that mushroom. So my purple coneflowers were 6 feet tall that first year, and they weren't quite that the next year. They got a little bit smaller, and then more waist level is where we're used to being below. But man, I had some giant purple coneflowers with that good soil down there. They're not used to that. They're used to those dry conditions and prairies. They absolutely. All right. Tulip poplars are great trees. The straightest tree in the forest, as we say.
And I believe the tallest tree in the Midwest.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, when my brother ran the Highland Games, so we would cut those trees for the cabers. They tossed the pole because they were the straightest trees we could find with no limbs on them. They were so easy to clean up. Absolutely. Thank you, Ellie. Remind everybody to hit the thumbs up, the like, and share. Like I said, the comments help us tremendously, and we really appreciate you guys joining in. It's this is such an important topic. Absolutely. Yep. Rick's pictures were wonderful. The last slide is
about
me
the plants.
with Kurt. I want to know
All the names
Plants
of all the
with names.
plants.
names of all the plants. He's your source. I got you. Yes. Yep. That's a match made in heaven right there. She's learning. That's right. My lavender is pretty dry now. See, here's I'm going to cut back for a second. Flush.
Oh, Lord. So I don't know a lot about lavender.
But you can cut things back. They do tend to go. You used to tell me that about the milkweed. If I'd cut them back in June or whatever, then that'll head again and things like that. So there are plants that do that. That's for sure. And give you some benefits along. Yes, Andrew, you do need that book.
And I pinned it to the top.
Melody's got it pinned to the top, so you can. It is a fantastic book. I think is mine signed. It might be, and all four. Absolutely, his book. He's. Where is he, professor? University of Delaware. Is that right?
Yep.
A professor.
Yep.
We've seen him speak here in Kansas City, and like I said, it's.
Let's go back. Garden nurseries having trouble finding milkweed.
What's up? Oh, sorry. Didn't click right.
That's okay.
They only have swamp milkweed. Interesting. This is in Cincinnati. So, he was collecting seed. And another thing, I forgot to tell you, he was talking about, this milkweed producing all this seed. I was telling how you used to make the mud balls. We'd go collect seed all around the area from the milkweed and roll them up in mud balls, and we'd be out bird watching, and we were throwing these mud balls around, just trying to get some growing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no problem collecting seeds from the wild, because they're just going to blow around. If you can put them in areas that they're going to benefit. All right. For your coral honeysuckle to start dying during this time of year. I don't know anything about coral honeysuckle other than it's great. But that's
mine doesn't. So red buckeyes or common buckeyes will die back early, especially when it's hot. So mine are Mine are starting to turn kind of yellow and brown, but coral honeysuckle, mine's doing all right. I've never had it die back.
Well,
Now,
it's been so hot this year, and it just depends on maybe less moisture this year for it.
mhm.
They have to they have to pack it in and store the energy in the root system to come back next year. I think.
Yeah, it'll come back. I mean, you can cut it down and it'll regrow. So don't worry about part of it dying. But I haven't had that experience.
That's fantastic, Pat. Get
Yeah.
these kids inspired. Absolutely. Prairie Moon Nursery is a good source, Missouri Wildfire as well. Now, you guys, we always promote this. Now, you guys are all part of the country. You got, Southern California, Boston, Cincinnati. You see all of the places that have been checked in. Your local conservation department should have a list of native plant nurseries in your area. Like Andrew, I always tell you about the Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania that I was director of in Pittsburgh. They have a native plant nursery on site. And they collect all, just like here we collect all the seeds locally. They do too. So the genotypes are there. They're acclimated to your soil types there in that area, and that's a really good idea. You buy seeds from North Dakota and try to plant them in Texas. Usually that's not going to work out so well. So find your local nurseries and local the native plant nurseries. And like I said, usually your conservation department does have a list of those. All right. Absolutely. Your coral honeysuckle is still blooming. All right. We got to close this down. We just already ran over time. But thank you guys so much. Trumpet vine. Yep. That is a great hummingbird plant. Steve, thank you, Mary, for your time. Absolutely. Thank you all guys for tuning in and being such an integral part of Mark's Backyard Birds, and these lives are so fun. Send in ideas for more programs. We want to talk about what you want us to talk about. Let us know. I'm always trying to plan out, several of them. And get it on the calendar, and the programs are going to, like every Monday night, I'm thinking about doing a series on bird watching programs, my favorite bird watching spots in the Southwest, and then these kind of areas, locations, because I get asked all the time about, if you could go bird watching, where would you go? And so I'm gonna do a little series like that, because the stories that we did, our favorite stories. Mary, you want to tell the one that we talked about that they didn't get in there? Is it going to be coming up? The little bird on the ground there in Texas?
Which one are we talking about?
The Paraki. See that one?
It's still my heart, right?
Yeah.
So we were Sterolano, right?
Yeah.
Sterolano Grande Park, and we were walking along. Thank goodness somebody was there to point it out, because it was, there was I believe it was a paved path or a dirt path, and then there was like a lot of leaves and kind of a wooded area. And Mark can post a picture. We took a picture of it. There was a Paraki on a nest in these leaves.
Which is related to the whippoorwill family, and they nest on the ground. Yep.
And had you not had somebody, you would have never picked this bird out. It was so camouflaged with the leaves. It was the cutest thing, and it was sitting on a nest. And the week after we left, the chicks were big enough that people started taking pictures of the chicks peeking out from underneath it. Oh, yes. That is still my heart. That was just amazing.
These trips. Oh, there's the doggies. Yeah, just full of them. So, guys, thank you so much. And I love you guys are chiming in with ideas, and we'll definitely make note of them and get them going. So, thank you guys. Thank you, Mary. As always, it was great. And then we were feverishly getting these slots together this afternoon, but we're both busy people. There's no doubt about it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for inspiring so many of us. And as I always like to say, until next time, let's talk birds.